As we mentioned, U.S. Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle stepped down today following the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump. Her resignation comes after increasing criticism over the agency's inability to prevent the assassination attempt. For more on this, we're joined by Christina Billout of CMB Consulting. She's a former special agent in charge of the U.S. Secret Service here in Phoenix. Good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ted.
Thoughts on the resignation? Did it have to happen?
It absolutely had to happen. As a Secret Service agent, nobody wants to be in that position in front of a congressional hearing, testifying to a terrible day that happened in the Secret Service. You're there because something bad happened. I think that based on her testimony, based on the perceived stonewalling, perceived lack of transparency, she definitely needed to step down. And mainly because moving forward in that role, her ability to garner the trust and the confidence of the agency and the men and women that work there, plus the United States, has considerably waned, and she needed to step down.
She said that, quote, "We fell short of the mission to protect the nation's leaders." I mean, that is the bottom line.
That's right.
That mission simply was not accomplished.
That's correct.
And so you agree with her decision?
100%.
Let's talk about procedure here, because we talked about this a little bit before, but we're kind of getting a better idea of what happened.
Right.
This building was excluded from the Secret Service perimeter, the security perimeter. It was so close to the stage. Why did that happen? How did that happen?
I think it's a parsing of terms. When we think of a perimeter, in my mind, that building did fall on the perimeter. It did fall in what we would consider an area that needed to be protected by an asset, likely one of our partners in local law enforcement, perhaps another agency should have been there, but we can't discard the buildings around the site. So the perimeter is sort of what's containing the people attending the event. The outer perimeter and beyond definitely needs to be looked at, and any threats need to be mitigated right away. So therein lies the failure.
450 feet from the podium, definitely within rifle range. You would think that that would be a lockdown kind of situation.
100%. It's been said time and time again, but, and I'll say it again, I was here last week and talked about it. There, I believe, was a lack of communication. I believe there were certainly assets around. We're told there was Overwatch. We're told there were agents on the ground. We're told there were people in a response position. I think where the failure lies is with the time it took to actually identify the shooter, especially since there were already calls by people attending the rally, other law enforcement, that this individual was suspicious and in a place he shouldn't have been. There's mitigation in place to send what we would call a protective intelligence team, and they're usually made up of a special agent and one of the partners from the local law enforcement agency to go and physically interview or interact with these potential threats or suspicious persons. Why it took so long for that to happen is something that hopefully the investigation will figure out.
Sounds like they lost track of him.
That's the only thing I can think of.
I think the testimony was that I think the local law enforcement said they lost track of him after, it was an hour before they saw this guy an hour.
That's too long.
Yes.
That's too long.
That building itself, again, this is a basic question from someone who's not in the business like you are. Why was there not someone in law enforcement where that shooter, 450 feet, shouldn't there be someone up there?
100%, absolutely. There should have been at least, and I've said this to colleagues and some others, even if you couldn't put a person up there for whatever reason, you get a scissor lift and you raise it up so that they have high ground coverage, they have an ability to see what's going on there and have Overwatch. You take advantage of other assets that might be available, especially at an agricultural area. I bet you there's a scissor lift or maybe a backhoe or something in there that you could utilize to get a team or to get a professional law enforcement set of eyes and ears up there.
Something else that seems kind of basic, at least from where I sit. Why, if there was a suspicious person seen, we've lost track of the suspicious person, people in the audience may have seen something as well, a guy acted kind of squirrely out there. Why was the president allowed to take the stage?
Well, again, I believe it's directly related to communication. Even former President Trump himself has said he would have been fine just pausing for a moment and getting it all figured out. Hopefully, the independent investigation, the mission assurance investigation internally with the Secret Service, the Blue Ribbon Panel, all of these investigations, the FBI investigation, hopefully they'll drill down on why that happened.
Yeah. And again, former President Trump here we're not quite sure about whatever happened there, but we know someone was killed, and we know 2 people were seriously injured here. Yes. And security failures in this congressional hearing yesterday described as shocking. You agree with that?
I do. I agree that they were shocking, but I also feel the Secret Service has been underfunded and understaffed for decades. And because of that, very likely undertrained. We have consistently done more with less, which is not the right way to look at things. But when I say that, I mean being creative with their protective footprint, being creative with using fire trucks to block line of sight, scissor lifts to raise a CS, a counter sniper team up in the air. You use what you can, because oftentimes the assets are stretched very thin. And I believe there were 2 other protectees in the Pennsylvania district at the time that had assets dedicated to them. I hope this investigation can identify what went wrong, and I hope that the Secret Service can take steps to mitigate that in the future.
With that in mind, do you expect to see some fundamental changes in Secret Service tactics, in Secret Service? Obviously, you would like to see resources increased and improved. What about tactics?
100%. The tactical world is constantly evolving. You know, the use of cyber, the use of the technology, Overwatch technology, drone technology, radio technology, all of these things are growing every day. Again, the budget for the Secret Service is about $3 billion, and to most people that sounds like a lot of money. It's really not. It's actually among DHS agencies, it's the smallest budget, and it's the smallest agency. There are about 7,000 employees worldwide in the Secret Service. That's less than a third of the entire FBI. And the Secret Service has 36 full-time protectees, which requires staffing, equipment, cars, training, travel. The list goes on, and that's full-time. So yes, there does need to be some fundamental tactical changes implemented, and hopefully there will.
Last question here. We got about 30 seconds left. If you were asked to testify in front of this congressional investigation, what would you tell them? What would you say to them?
I want to say first that I do believe that yesterday's testimony should have started in a closed session. I believe that they would have had much more transparency if Congress had assigned some ranking members of the House Oversight Committee and listened to what we've already learned. I think that Director Cheadle would have had an opportunity for more transparency if she was in an area where she could speak freely, because she was not in any position to answer most of those questions yesterday in that public forum. Very sensitive information that the Secret Service just does not divulge in a public forum. So I commend her bearing, I commend her ability to stay unemotional while the decorum of that room completely went out the window. I think she did as well of a job as she possibly could under the circumstances, while keeping the men and women of the Secret Service and the protective mission in the forefront.
Christina Billoud, thank you. Great information, interesting points. Good to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ted.